Hello, we are going to talk about the very important process of photosynthesis. This process is going to occur in plants, algae, and some types of bacteria called cyanobacteria. It is the process of sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water entering into the leaf, and then the leaf in the mesophyll layer actually producing carbohydrates and oxygen that we rely on so much. So again, this is going to be taking place in plants, certain bacteria, and algae. Okay, just a little fun fact. Each year, plants convert about 600 billion tons of carbon dioxide, and they release about 400 billion tons of oxygen in the environment. And also, each year, plants use more carbon through the process of photosynthesis than is mined throughout the year. So it's kind of like a living bridge. It's going to connect the sun and all the organisms on Earth, kind of providing all of the necessary energy that is needed for life. So just a little history, okay? In the 1600s, they thought that plants absorbed all of their nutrients and food from the soil. They didn't really understand the process of photosynthesis. So a very simple experiment was conducted to disprove this. Jean-Baptiste von Helmont was a Belgian physician, and he did this very simple experiment. He took a 5-pound willow tree and he planted it in 200 pounds of soil that was dry. Okay, and he left it there for 5 years. Didn't do anything to it, just allowed the rain to fall upon it and the sunlight. Well, 5 years later, he took the willow tree out and he weighed it, and it weighed 169 pounds, which is 164 pounds heavier. Now, the soil, he took out that soil, which was the 200 pounds, and when he weighed it, he found that it lost 2 ounces. So this little experiment concluded that the plants, or the willow, the weight gain came from the water, okay, and the sunlight. So they were starting to say, what's going on here? And that's how they started to figure out the process of photosynthesis. Okay, now if you remember with the leaf, we talked about the importance of the mesophyll layer, and in particular with the chloroplast. So the chloroplast is green. It's a green pigment with the chlorophyll. It's going to help capture that energy from the sunlight and manufacture it into carbohydrates, excuse me. We call it a plastid. It's a green plastid. It's one of the organelles that are found in plant cells or algae or bacteria. Okay, so the structure, we have the liquid, which is the stroma, and then we have the thalcaloids that are made up into stacks from the grana. Okay, and again, remember the chloroplast has a little DNA and a little bit of RNA. Okay, so this is very, very important in the process of photosynthesis. There are other pigments that are important also. We primarily focus in on the chlorophyll, which is in the chloroplast, okay, which is green. It's green because it reflects the green light, and it will absorb wavelengths of red and blue color. So pigments are very important in capturing energy and absorbing the wavelengths so that photosynthesis can take place. So chlorophyll is green, found in chloroplast. The carotenoids, okay, are yellow, orange, and red. That's what gives carrots, oranges, tomatoes, and so forth their colors. In the fall, when we're seeing those reds and the golds, that is also because the carotenoids are showing their pigments, because as the leaves stop producing their chlorophyll in the cooler weathers, the carotenoids become more visible, and that's what we get that beautiful fall foliage. Okay, it does absorb blue and green and reflects the yellow, orange, and red. We also have xanthophyll, okay, which is going to absorb the blue, green, and yellow, and it is going to reflect the reds and the oranges. This is just showing you what the chlorophyll would look like. And we do have a couple of other pigments that are important. We do have pigments that are found in algae. This is the red pigments. And then we also have blue pigment that's found in algae, and again the bacteria that is photosynthetic, which is cyanobacteria. Okay, so when we do talk about photosynthesis, we do talk about photosystems. A single chloroplast can contain several thousand photosystems, and a photosystem is pretty much clusters of the photosynthetic pigments that are embedded in the thalcaloid. Okay, so it's very, very important. And we're going to talk about two of them. We're going to be talking about photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. Okay, all right. So these antenna pigments are going to contain about 300 chlorophyll molecules and 50 different accessory pigments. That is what's going to help gather the light energy from the different wavelengths. Okay, and that's going to help channel that so we can use the photosynthetic process. Okay, the reaction center is just a pair of chlorophyll molecules and an electron acceptor. So that's the basic structure of the photosystems for 1 and 2. Okay, and this is just showing you it's going to absorb the sunlight. It's going to have the antennas surrounding the reaction center that's going to help with the absorption of sunlight. And that is the general gist. And again, I said that there was two photosystems. There was photosystem 1 and 2. Okay, photosystem 1 is going to absorb the light from the far part of the spectrum, and photosystem 2 is also going to be absorbing the red light. Okay, we're going to say P is pigment, so P680 is pigment of wavelength 680. Okay, so here we're talking about the process of photosynthesis. So this is the process of green plants, algae, cyanobacteria taking in the solar energy from the sun and carbon dioxide and water and turning them into sugar or starch or some form of carbohydrate and producing oxygen. So this is a very important equation that you need to memorize. I'm sorry, I just shifted the screen. So we have carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of sunlight is going to yield a carbohydrate plus oxygen. Now, this was figured out in the 1800s, okay? But they weren't really sure where things were actually coming about. So in 1950, they performed an experiment that showed where the oxygen comes from. And it actually shows the oxygen coming from the splitting of water. And you can see here that the water plants are showing the oxygen coming off as bubbles. Okay, and again, that was just showing, I'm sorry, how the oxygen came about. So the oxygen we get from photosynthesis is from the splitting of water. Okay, so photosynthesis is broken down into two parts. We have the light reactions and we have what we call the dark reactions or the Calvin cycle. And it's called the Calvin cycle because Melvin Calvin was the man who figured it out. It was often called the dark reactions because we do not need sunlight. Sunlight is only needed in the first part or the light reactions. Okay, so the light reactions, pretty much the main gist of this is to convert light energy into chemical energy. Okay, and then that's where the water splits to produce the oxygen. Now, the Calvin cycles, the dark reactions, and that's what's actually going to make the sugar from the increase or the intake of carbon dioxide. Okay, so a little bit more facts on the light reactions. It's going to occur in the thalcolite, okay? And the first thing is that the plant is going to trap the sunlight, and it does get trapped by those pigments, in particular chlorophyll. Now, inside of the chlorophyll are electrons, and once they get that sunlight, they get kind of excited and they absorb that light energy. Okay, this is just showing you the different parts of the spectrum, and we will do this when we talk about the chlorophyll absorption spectrum. So this is when we're talking about absorbing the light energy. Okay, so back to our part. So the light is going to strike the object. It gets reflected. That's how we got our pigment. And if it gets absorbed or transmitted, okay, absorbed is what's very, very important in the function of photosynthesis. And we're going to do this graph. Again, this is just showing you absorption. So that sunlight gets absorbed into the leaf by the different pigments. And this is just showing you the wavelengths with corresponding to the light. So in the area of the green area, this is where the light is reflected, and that's why we see the chlorophyll is green. And this is where absorption is taking place. So this is excellent absorbance for photosynthesis. and so is this. So those wavelengths are important for photosynthesis. Okay, so we've absorbed the sunlight, and then there were electrons within the chlorophyll, and they're getting all excited. Well, they're going to leave the chlorophyll, and they get picked up by an electron acceptor, and they go through a series of different reactions. Okay, as the electron goes through all those reactions, energy can be released. Okay, now the electron finally will get picked up by an electron acceptor called NADP. Okay, and this is just an abbreviation of nicotinamide adenosine diphosphate. Okay, now as that whole electron is going down a series of reactions and getting picked up by the NADP, a water molecule will split. Now, the electron within the water molecule will go back to the chlorophyll so it can absorb more energy. Okay, the oxygen is going to get released into air, and the hydrogen is going to attach with the original electron with NADP, and that is going to form NADPH. Okay? Oops, sorry, that's a D. It's very hard to write, and that will form NADPH. Okay? So just to kind of sum up the light reactions, we have water and sunlight being needed, and we're going to produce energy, NADPH, and oxygen. And this is just kind of showing you with the different photosystems and the absorbance of lights and the electrons going through the different transport chains or different reactions. Okay, and again, the same time, water is going to split. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the dark reaction. This is going to occur in the stroma. So carbon dioxide is going to enter in. Okay, the carbon is going to join with a 5-carbon molecule, which is called RUBP. So that makes a 6-carbon molecule. Well, that 6-carbon molecule is extremely unstable. So it's going to split into 2 3-carbon molecules, which we call PGA. Now, the hydrogen from the NADPH is going to join up with PGA to make an aldehyde. So we're going to call it PGAL. And that's going to go through a series of reactions, and it's going to form a 4-carbon, a 5-carbon, and finally the 6-carbon molecule. It will recreate that first 5-carbon molecule, which is the RUBP, and it will make glucose. So that Calvin cycle has to turn several times to make one molecule of glucose. Each time it turns, it does bring in a molecule of carbon. So to sum it up, we need the NADPH that we form with the light reactions, the CO2, which is entering into the leaf, and it's going to produce glucose. And that's kind of the overview. So the light reactions is really going to give us the oxygen component, and the Calvin cycle is going to give us the sugar or the carbon dioxide. I mean the carbohydrate, excuse me, from the carbon dioxide. So the rate of photosynthesis we can measure by the amount of oxygen released and the carbon dioxide consumed. And there are some factors that are going to increase or influence the rate of photosynthesis. So light intensity matters, temperature, how much carbon dioxide we have, how much oxygen we have. Okay, and just to let you know that we do have a couple different types of plants. We have what are called C3 plants, which are the legumes, wheat, barley, rice. We have C4 plants, which are sugarcane, corn, crabgrass, and we have CAM plants, which are pineapple, cactus, and lily. All right, and just to let you know, because of the different pathways, they have to have certain adaptations because of the hot environment. So not all plants have their stoma open during the day. Some of them have to have it done in the evening time. So this is just a little bit more to kind of show you that there are some variations within photosynthesis. Okay, so if you have any questions, please see me tomorrow. We're going to spend tons of time reviewing this because I know this is a very difficult process. Okay, but let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.